Hey, YouTube. It's Pick Six Podcast Show, little draft edition. If you like what you see here, please subscribe, hit the bell notification so you'll know every time we go live. Hey, everybody, Pick Six Podcast, talking a little 2023 early mock draft. Me, Ryan Wilson, Chris Trapasso, Josh Edwards. No Will Brinson because he's off to go camping, he says. So if you see him out and about somewhere other than a campground, please let us know because I know he's not camping. What is this? This is May 6th. Last year, this time, guys, that's when he took he just disappeared mysteriously to get the hair plugs replanted. So that would be my guess. We'll all find out together what happens. All right, guys, the draft 2022 version's in the books. Going to talk a little 2023 because it's never too early. Pro tip: it is way too early to be talking about 2023, guys. But before we get there, and we were talking about this briefly before we started recording here. I don't know if you guys know off the top of your head, but I actually made a count of it. Josh, I'll ask you first. Do you have any idea how many players, and you watched a ton of players. You watched more players than me and Trapped, I'm pretty sure. How many players got drafted that you didn't watch? Do you know?
I don't know exactly. I would say probably 15.
And how many players did you watch all told? More than
400. I think it was about 450.
450. All right, Traps. You have any idea?
Mine was around that too. But yeah, there were definitely some names late in the process, and even like round 6, where I was like, man, I didn't know that this guy was on the draft radar whatsoever. So if between the three of us, if there was 10 to 15, I think there was more players in this 2022 draft than normal that were like, who in the hell is this guy that I've ever remember in covering the draft.
And do you know how many guys you watched?
I watched like 350.
Yeah, so I watched about 350 as well, and I counted it up. I had 28 dudes that got drafted that I didn't watch. So there were about 28 guys that were undrafted free agents that I did watch, and a couple guys that I had as undrafted free agents who got drafted. If you're watching CBS Sports HQ right now at 1 p.m. on May 6th, you will see Tim Doyle wearing a pink sports coat with white piping. Don't see that every day. Nice. But the very first guy that went off the board, the highest someone went in the actual draft, of which a player hadn't seen, was Sam Womack, the cornerback out of Toledo, that went to San Francisco. Had you seen him, Chris?
I hadn't. No, that was my first one too.
And had you seen him, Josh?
I had not.
Jeez, 450 and no Sam Womack. So only one in the 5th round. Handful of guys in the 2nd round, starting the Christian Benford, the cornerback out of Villanova. I saw he got some buzz before the actual draft, but I was like, you know what? If the Villanova guy gets drafted, I'll let Josh worry about writing that up in real time. And then the 7th round. I
actually did him.
Oh, yeah, good. Great.
I did too. Great.
And the 7th round was just a free-for-all. I got crushed every other pick pretty much with these guys. Traps, you mentioned A.J. Arcuri, the Michigan State tackle. Xander Horvath prior to that. Didn't watch him. Nazeen Johnson prior to that. Didn't see him. So I think that the biggest takeaway, and Traps, you sort of touched on it, is that this class, more than any other, and I'm sure COVID year had a lot to do with that, it was just a free-for-all. And we didn't get any really – we got some insights late in the process of names to watch, and I watched a lot of those guys. Let me see if I can find them real quick. And that was a huge help. But at the end of the day, there were a ton of dudes. Like James Houston, I think we all watched him. I did watch Chris Oladokun.
Oladokun, yeah.
Yeah. Deron Bland, Fresno State, he got drafted. Devin Harper, I don't think he got drafted, or he may have. He actually did get drafted.
Think he did,
He did.
Yeah, height, weight, speed guy. Curtis Brooks, I think undrafted free agent maybe.
He got drafted.
He got drafted. So defensive tackle out Cincinnati.
I watched him.
Okay, there you go. Yep. So those were guys. Luigi, is that how you say it? Luigi Belaine out of Wake Forest, the Michigan transfer. Watched him, another height, weight, speed guy. So there were some names there, and it was just hit or miss. Yeah, you sort of really didn't know what was going to happen. But hey, that's why the draft's exciting. Yeah. So yeah, I just want to do a quick little recap there because there were a ton of guys, and this is the most like 350 is the most I've watched in any prior draft. So I thought I was on good footing. So clearly, about 80 guys discrepancy in terms of 262.
What's so hard about it is that I followed this like pro day results sheet that like someone put together every pro day result. And I actually went through in like early April, like the players that tested really well that I felt like, usually 6th and 7th round, that's when those teams take flyers on Athletic Freaks. And I made a list of like 55 guys that had really good workouts. So it was so hard to like dwindle down from there. Like, okay, who of these guys has actual quality film? I tried to get through as many of those as possible, but it was so late in the process. I think, like you mentioned, Ryan, Josh did a better job and got deeper than we did with that. But there's so many that have, a 40-inch vertical or close or run 4.5 or lower, that there's so many pro days today, so many schools. We're dipping into D2 and FCS and D3 that I think if you're a high caliber athlete, the NFL will find you today. And we certainly, saw that even as early as the 5th round.
Yeah. Out of curiosity, were there a lot of names from that pro day results list that you saw that ended up being drafted? Yeah,
I tweeted it. Nazeed Johnson was one from Marshall that I did actually watch. I just happened to get lucky watching him from Marshall. Got picked by the Chiefs. There were a bunch, and there was was there a Yale cornerback picked?
Yeah, I thought the Columbia cornerback might get picked, but it ended up being a guy from Yale, of course.
There was like 3 or 4 from this list. This little I just wrote it in the drafts of my email to myself. Like 3 or 4 that I was like, I'm glad I watched that guy because he seemed like he was going to all those players tested of NFL caliber, but there was a lot that I watched. Like I think Ryan was saying that I kind of felt stupid afterward. I'm like, I wasted about 5 or 6 hours watching a bunch of guys that like barely even got any, attention on the undrafted free agent marks. But I think that's the thing that I've learned to do over the years. Like at the end of the process, try to find those big time pro days, even if they're small school type players, because those are the ones that the teams like to take. That roll of the dice on late, but there were definitely names where I didn't not even know, which is a bummer, but it's just a formality when you're covering an entire draft class.
That's why teams have 30 plus people in the scouting department, not 3 nuts.
Yeah.
By the way, quickly before we move on to 2023, I'm trying to put this off as long as possible. I don't know if you guys know off the top of your head, but I made a list of these guys. So the guy that I thought was most overdrafted based on where I had them going and where he actually ended up was Tyron Davis-Price, the running back.
Me too.
For San Francisco. I had him as an undrafted free agent, not as necessarily a bad thing, but just because he just felt like a guy. But then when I went through and read the notes on him, he feels exactly like a Mike Shanahan running back. And I think it's an indictment, probably more of Trey Sermon than anything. And I think he'll probably be successful, but I was surprised that he went late 3rd round. So that was your highest guy too, Traps?
Yeah. Someone DM'd me about that, like a random one of my Twitter followers. And that's from looking at my scouting grade book. It was Ty Davis-Price. I think I had like a late 7th on him. I was like, okay, like he'll be one of those height, speed, weight types that will get picked there. But see him in the 3rd round when there were still a bunch of backs like Isaiah Spiller still available was pretty surprising.
Josh, anyone off the top of your head that stuck out?
No, I really don't. I was the ones that fell were the ones that we seem to be more aware of over the course of the 3 days, because it's like, why is this guy still here? And that was, Rasheed Walker, the offensive tackle from Penn State. That was probably the biggest one that I think we had left there until late day 3.
Rasheed Walker was my biggest value.
Yeah,
I had him as a late second, actually. And I know some teams liked him, not the team that drafted him, but there were some.
Mine was Marquise Hayes from Oklahoma, who went in the like one of the last picks in the draft to the Cardinals. I had a 2nd round grade on him, and that's like the humbling thing about evaluating an entire draft class, that you'll get a bunch of prospects on either end of the spectrum there that you're like, this guy feels like a top 100 or top 75 selection, and he's either not picked or is a 7th rounder, and then you'll have those shockers like Ty Davis-Price going in the 3rd round.
Yeah, it's a testament to how people can see players differently too, because I actually had him about 3 spots off from where he was drafted, but I had some big misses too. I mean, Tyquan Thornton, I did not think was going to go in the 2nd round, and I know you were much higher on him than I was, so that was probably one of the bigger misses that I had.
I had Tyquan as a late 5th. I had Marquise Hayes as a late 5th. So again, 3 people watching the same thing, all seeing different things. So I mean, it's not that, to your point, Josh. That's sort of how it feels about right. And the other guys that I sort of missed on, Sam Howell, not including him. I don't know what the hell happened to Sam Howell. Kalia Davis, I absolutely love, but he had an injury history. He went late 6th to San Francisco. And then I mentioned Tyquan is I was not as high on as the Patriots. And the other guy, let's see. Trapped is James Cook. Still unclear to me why he went late second. The Bills fans were really into their feelings because I mentioned that he seems more like Devin Singletary than what Zach Moss got you. And they were fired up about that. And while they're not the exact same player, I don't know that it's a huge – I would have taken Isaiah Spiller there, for example. I like Dameon Pierce, but Dameon Pierce doesn't do what they want James Cook to do, and the whole J.D. McKissick thing. I get that, but you got to talk to Bills fans about being so soft, Traps. I mean, they're a good football team, and their fans are such babies.
They're definitely very active on Twitter, Bills Mafia, and they pick up on if any media member from any outlet praises the Bills or says anything remotely negative. They're definitely very active. I'll just say that. The one that I kind of missed on, I don't know what you guys thought about him. Jojo Doman, the linebacker corner kind of from Nebraska. I liked him. He was older, but he was making plays on the ball down the field in coverage. And I kind of felt in a normal draft, if he was, 23 or 24 years old, he probably would have not gotten picked. But this was a draft of 23 and 24-year-olds all over this draft class, and he didn't even get picked. So I thought that was surprising. I think I had a third or a fourth round grade on him. Kind of felt like that Drew Tranquil type that could be half linebacker, half safety in today's NFL. Felt valuable, but that was one of the more humbling non-picks in this draft. Jojo Doman from Nebraska. I thought he was a good player.
I liked him, and I think you're right. It was age and injuries that doomed him, and that's what happened. Because I think I liked him early on day 3 as well. But before we move on, you can go ahead and defend the James Cook pick, and you can push back on why he's not anything close to Devin Singletary, just so we're on record with that, because I don't want Bill's fans
let me do that. I think the speed, the 4.42 speed is the biggest difference. That Devin Singletary ran not very fast in the 2019 combine, and that's been living in Western New York. My dad's a gigantic Bills fan. They have always said, the fans, they need more speed at the running back position. Then they draft Zach Moss the next year, and you're like, oh, he's powerful. He's going to be better on 3rd and 1, 4th and 2, but he's not going to give that game-breaking speed to the run game. And now, of course, the Bills are going to pass the ball a ton. They've been kind of ahead of the curve in first down pass rate, passing rate in general. They understand the efficiency that you get from passing the football, but I think the Bills and their fans have wanted someone that can hit a 60 or 70-yard touchdown, maybe on a screen or just on a classic handoff. Now, I agree with Josh that I didn't have James Cook as a second rounder, and I didn't think he was a tremendous natural runner. But like you mentioned, the J.D. McKissick thing falls through, and I think the Bills clearly had a need or a priority. Let's get this truly versatile running back, wide receiver hybrid type this offseason. They didn't get it with J.D. McKissick. That's what they hope James Cook can be. And I mean, there's a lot of targets in that Bills offense now that they added Jamison Crowder kind of under the radar. They have Gabe Davis, Diggs, of course.
Khalil Shakir.
Shakir. I don't think that James Cook's going to come in and get 150 carries as a rookie, but I think they wanted more speed in their backfield. And to me, that was James Cook's biggest just natural trait on film. Beyond being able to catch the football, he's just really effortlessly fast. And I think that's what the Bills wanted in their running back room.
Yeah, I think that's a good explanation. I think Brandon Beane actually called him a sub back. So to your point, he's not going to be carrying the ball a ton. I guess that's going to be Devin Singletary's job. Although Singletary had 40 plus targets last year. I think he had 58 the year before. So I guess they tried to shoehorn him into that role. They didn't like it. I get it. But I do wonder, do you want James Cook late second, or do you want Tyler Batty mid 6? Is there 4 rounds difference?
Or Spiller in the 4th round.
Or Spiller. But yeah, they weren't trying to hear that. So that's all right. Don't get mad, get better. That's what I've been told, so I will try to do that. All right, let's get to this thing. We're 15 minutes in, still reliving 2020. Let's do the 2023 mock draft. Lord help us. There you go. Not been waiting to hit that button. All right, so first things first. This isn't really a mock draft. I say it every year. It's sort of a watch list, and I think that's an important way to think about it, because at the end of the day, last year I had Spencer Rattler up there, Sam Howell up there, who we mentioned earlier, and clearly one guy got benched and the other guy got drafted in the 5th round after all his teammates left for the NFL the year before, and he sort of struggled. So that's one thing. The draft order is based on reverse Super Bowl odds by Sportsline. So you can tweet at RJ White if you want to. Be angry about that because I think he's looking for more interaction on Twitter. So he might appreciate that. But it has nothing to do with me thinking the Jets are going to be terrible. Honestly, I think they'll probably be much better than they were. So at the top. So at the quarterbacks, because that's sort of where we always start. Last year was a rough go for the quarterbacks, and that played out in the actual draft. Josh, I'll start with you. And let me ask you a specific question because you're Kentucky. You focus on Kentucky recruiting and the Wildcats during the fall. What are your thoughts on Will Levis, Penn State transfer? Pete Prisco loves this guy. I put him in there just so he would shut up about it. I watched a little bit of him yesterday while I was taking my son to a doctor's appointment. I watched a little bit of the Mississippi State game. Where are you at on Will Levis?
I think he probably is going to be a first-round pick.
Yep.
He's got great size. He's got great arm strength, maybe the best in the class. I was at their pro day this year, and he was actually throwing to some of the guys. And he had this one play where he rolled to his left and threw it about 65 yards. Didn't have to show off because it's, the scouts aren't there to see him, but you could kind of see the scouts exchange some glances like, this guy might be something that's coming here. But he's got to get his lower body mechanics a little bit more in line with what his upper body is doing. I think that's been the biggest issue so far. I was actually encouraged with how well he uses his eyes to manipulate the defense. Great toughness. He's endeared himself to the team and the community. He's a great leader. Smart guy. He's going to be 24 years old this summer that he is drafted, which, as a quarterback these days, that's still going to give you a decade of playing time. But some teams that are more analytically inclined may take that into consideration. But I think he's got all the traits that you look for in a potential first-round pick. He's just got to get the lower body married to the upper body, and I think he's, potentially the first quarterback off the board, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I'm really excited for Josh to be covering Will Levis next year. Like, I'm going to certainly dive into all his film. You will too, Ryan. But the fact that we have like a Kentucky guy that's watched every single snap already and knows Will Levis in what will be or what should be a really much stronger quarterback class. I'm really excited for it, especially like you mentioned, Ryan. We were just like, this quarterback class isn't very good. We kind of tried to hype it up. I think we were maybe all a little bit incorrect on where these players will be picked at the quarterback spot, of course. But to have Josh being able to break down Will Levis, I think will be a lot of fun. And I agree with him. A little sneak peek. I have my mock draft coming out Monday. I have Will Levis going number 1 overall because of what Josh mentioned. I think the size and the arm talent will really allow teams to gravitate toward him. He just kind of has that physical makeup of number 1 overall picks in the past.
So I'll ask you, Traps, and we'll just circle back around here. You mentioned you have him going first overall. Anyone else you have your eye on in that class? I had 7 guys going just, for shucks and giggles, as the kids say.
Yeah.
CJ Stroud was my first going to Detroit. But again, the pairings between the players and the teams don't really mean much. We'll find out more once the season starts. But who else do you like?
I certainly CJ Stroud and Bryce Young. I think their poise that they showed under pressure in big games very early in their college career, impeccable. And with CJ Stroud, I think his down the field ball placement, like that he showed against Michigan and then in the Rose Bowl against Utah, there was a bunch of like, holy shit throws in that game where I was just shocked that he was able to fit him through tight windows. What I'll say too, that I just checked yours, Ryan, and I'm not sure about Josh's. I'm assuming it was close. Your mock draft last year in May, and this is a watch list. We're not pairing these teams with players necessarily. That's not really the aim of it. You had 12 players who ultimately were first round picks. I had 11. I'm sure Josh was in that vicinity too. So
I had 2. I just did the math.
That it's easy for people to dismiss these and say they're kind of ridiculous, but I think framing it as a watch list makes a lot of sense. And it's not like, 1 or 2 of these guys are going to go in the first. That's about 1/3 of the first round we ultimately pegged that usually have hype and then live up to it and then go in the first round. So that's just a good kind of stat that I wanted to put out there, that I would say between 10 to 15 of these players will ultimately go in the first round. But I think after Will Levis, it's Bryce Young, CJ Stroud. I really like Anthony Richardson too from Florida.
Yep.
Certainly hasn't showed it on the football field yet in terms of like big time production, But early in the season, before his hamstring injury last year, he had like an 80-yard touchdown run on a keeper. He's really got a strong arm. The arm talent is there. Malik Cunningham will be like a super duper senior, I think, at Louisville. He's very athletic too. Those two other guys outside of the marquee top three with Levis, Stroud, and Bryce Young feel like they could ultimately be first rounders. And it does feel like I think Caesars has it at 5.5 or 6.5 over under quarterbacks in the first round. That feels like it could be that kind of 2018 type super hype quarterback class that I think will do a lot better for our traffic at CBSSports.com.
For sure. Josh, let me ask you about Spencer Rattler. Like, I'm just going to keep putting him on these mock drafts until he finally gets drafted in the first round. How do you feel about him leaving Oklahoma for South Carolina, and in terms of enhancing his chances? Do you think he's going to be able to do it above the neck, or is it going to be same old, same old?
Well, I think that's ultimately what we're trying to find out. I mean, it's kind of hard to imagine going from Lincoln Riley to just about anybody else is going to be an upgrade for him. But I don't know, what kind of emotions he was going through. They obviously had this highly touted quarterback prospect in Caleb Williams that had come in behind him, and maybe he was feeling a little bit of pressure. I don't know. So all I can do is speculate, but this is a guy that certainly has the talent and the capability to be an NFL draft pick. And now he's in a fresh situation where he's not going to get a lot of pressure from the options behind him, and he's got a fairly good supporting cast. So he's going to have a good opportunity to kind of change the narrative around him this year. But I'm a little bit more gun shy than you are at putting Rattler in the first round.
The one point that I want to mention from that, I think this will be a fun case study to see a quarterback go from that Lincoln Riley super creative air raid offense that has produced multiple number one overall picks, tons of productivity, to just like a quote unquote normal offense. And like, we will see, it's the ultimate litmus test. Was Spencer Rattler's freshman season that pushed him into the first round of a lot of these way too early mock drafts last year? Was that simply just the byproduct of being the quarterback in Lincoln Riley's offense? Or is he truly like a transcendent type quarterback? I know he was a big recruit, but I'm just excited to see him in an offense that's not so quarterback friendly like Lincoln Riley's offense is.
I'm trying to, so let's see. Who is the Georgia quarterback that transferred to West Virginia? What's his name? The former USC guy. I can't find his name real quick. It was
JT Daniels.
Yeah, so JT Daniels.
He's on his like 15.
JT Daniels is at West Virginia, and less than an hour away is Keaton Slovis at Pittsburgh, former USC guy. So the USC quarterbacks are all over the map, and there's a chance they'll be playing each other. All with the portal transfer, all that other stuff, which is something else to keep an eye on. All right, Josh, give me a deep dive. Give me your Joe Burrow, Kenny Pickett quarterback that's going to come out of nowhere that folks may not know about, that might have a chance to earn his way into the first round and like Kenny Pickett, go to a team that's probably going to win the Super Bowl next year.
Yeah, I'll give kind of one leftover comment on Levis before I move on here. He obviously had Liam Cohen as his offensive coordinator last year. Cohen has been hired as the Rams offensive coordinator for the coming season. Cohen's replacement at Kentucky is Rich Scangarello, who has been a quarterback coach in the NFL for quite a long time. So he's going to get good coaching this upcoming season. So you have to be excited about that and what that could mean for Levis's future. The quarterback I want to talk about is Miami's Tyler Van Dyke. I had an opportunity to watch him recently. Maybe we would have talked about Devin Leary from NC State if Brinson had actually shown up for the podcast, but we're not going to do that. We'll talk about a different ACC quarterback instead. And I think Tyler Van Dyke is a guy that, throws with touch and accuracy down the field. He's got good size, maybe not some of the mobility that others in this class are going to have, but you see the type of plays that he's able to make with his arm. And I think for that reason, he's going to be a first round consideration for many teams next year.
Yeah, I had him in this mock draft thing here. What do you got, Traps?
How about Emory Jones, who just transferred to Arizona State? He was the big recruit that actually was able to fend off Anthony Richardson at Florida to be the starter there. And with Emory Jones, he's like 6'3", 220, 230 pounds. Like, he has the size of what teams normally look for in first round quarterbacks. The athleticism is there. He's never been able to put it together as a passer, but I wonder with Herm Edwards there at Arizona State, a lot of former NFL coaches on that staff. Maybe if he has a decent season or a strong season without there being a ton of expectations at Arizona State, Emory Jones could be someone that maybe won't ascend to be the number 1 overall pick, but that we could be saying, hey, look, this was a big recruit. The athleticism's there. The size is there. Now he's finally put it all together in his final season on a new team with a new program.
So I have 3 players here, and I'll start with the smallest. And I do wonder now if teams are going to start shying away from small quarterbacks, because this year's class had plenty of small quarterbacks, and none of them went early. But I'll start with Talia Tangavaloa, who actually he's not a bad player. I watched him last year, and then I can't remember the game, but he threw four interceptions. Prior to that, he looked pretty good, and he looked like he had a better arm than his brother, Tua. I don't know if he'll be a first-round pick, and he's also only 5'11". So that's something to consider. But he flashed at times. I don't think he's a bad football player. So he's 5'11". That's a concern. But KJ Jefferson at Arkansas is a big kid, and he's athletic, 6'3", 245, and he moves certainly better than the 245 indicates. I want to see what he does this year. And then finally, Tanner Mckee is 6'6", the quarterback out of Stanford. And he got some buzz during the fall. He came back to school, which I thought was probably the right decision. If Davis Mills had come back to school, we've said this plenty, he probably would have been the first quarterback taken from this class. He's still the Texans starter, so it worked out for him. But in terms
what about Jake Hayner?
Jake Hayner, you guys both talked him up last year before he returned to school. Did he transfer, or is he still Fresno State?
I think he removed himself from the portal. Josh would probably have a better grasp on that than I would, but I think he was going to, and I never saw that he landed somewhere else. He's another smaller type, but made a lot of big-time throws and kind of has that, if you want to just label every small white quarterback Baker Mayfield, he kind of has that Baker Mayfield kind of toughness to his game. But did he transfer, Josh? Do you know? I don't think
he entered the portal, and then they hired a new head coach who I'm blanking on right now, but he decided to stay with that coach because they had a history. So he's still at Fresno State.
All right. So they're the quarterbacks, and, this list is going to change markedly between now and 50 and a half weeks from now. So all the more reason to keep coming back every week and seeing how these guys fluctuate up and down the old draft board. Let's move to the defense. And I'm almost certain that if Will Anderson were in this draft class, he'd have been the first defensive player taken, maybe the first player taken. So, Traps, are you taking Will Anderson over Trayvon Walker's traits if you're the Jaguars, had he been in this draft class?
Yes. I think with Will Anderson, you have really good traits too. I mean, I'm pretty sure he's not 6'5", 270. He looks smaller than that on film, but the productivity over his first 2 seasons, the efficiency as a pass rusher was tremendous. I think he's a great run defender too. He's just really, really powerful, explosive. I think right now you probably have to lean toward quarterback being the number 1 overall pick just because of the positional value and that we have these hyped players that were underclassmen. But the first non-quarterback to go off the board, it feels like it's going to be Will Anderson from Alabama. I agree. He would have been at least or at worst a top 5 pick in this draft class. He probably should have gotten some more Heisman votes because I think he was that good of a player at Alabama.
So he's 6'4", 245. That's what he's listed at.
Okay.
He allegedly ran a 4.56. He plays that fast. He'll be 22 when he starts his rookie season in the NFL. His birthday is September 2nd, as I look at it here. So fingers crossed that he doesn't have any issues with branding and crypto, because Kayvon Thibodeau 12 months ago was a slam dunk first overall pick, and he fell to 5. Josh, Will Anderson's obviously a dude. Anyone else that you like up there at the top on the defensive side of the ball that really we should be talking about?
Miles Murphy from Clemson, defensive lineman. I love him. I mean, he's 6'5", 275, kind of like Trayvon Walker in that he could probably play on the edge, but has that hybrid size. So you're kind of wondering what he's going to become. I'm not concerned with that. I mean, this guy's a football player. He's got speed. He's got power. He can rush from the inside, but he's a guy that I'm confident in playing in run situations on the edge as well. So I love Miles Murphy. He's a top 10 player for me comfortably. I mean, he's easily one of the best prospects in this class, in my opinion. So that's one that I'm looking at early this year.
What are you having time to watch all these guys? Like, I literally have only seen these guys in passing while watching the 2022 class, and you're already 50 deep. What do you do? I mean, are you neglecting your son? How old's your son now? Is he even a year old?
Yeah, he is. He'll be.
Are you neglecting yourself?
Does he know what you look like?
He does. Yeah, he's seen pictures of me. I've been told.
I was going to say, what are you doing?
He'll be 16 months here in less than a week. So.
Oh, okay. So he's walking?
Oh, yeah. He's walking. He's running. All that good stuff. Yeah, he's a handful.
Yeah. I can imagine. It was funny today. My dog is actually 13, and, he's 13 going on 1 million. So it's now like I was saying to my wife, is there an old folks home for dogs? So all I'm doing is it's like I'm cleaning up after this dog all the time. Like he's like a 800-year-old grandfather. But I used to say when my kids were your kids' age right now, and our dog was much younger, 95% of my day was spent repeating myself. The other 5% was cleaning up poop. And I'm returning to that now because this dog is having some BM issues. Oh man, what a time to be alive. But anyway, Josh is able to change diapers, watch his son, and grind tape early May. Let me ask you, Traps. Jalen Carter is the guy that Prisco wouldn't quit talking about during the actual 22 draft. It's the best player in that defense. I don't know how much you've seen of him, but I'm sure he flashed number 88 as you were watching the 5 or 6 other guys that ended up going in the top 100 for Georgia.
Yeah, if there is a player like I just mentioned that I think Will Anderson should be the odds-on favorite to be the first non-quarterback picked in the 2023 draft. If there's someone that can be that candidate to unseat Will Anderson, I think it would be Jalen Carter, and that he's explosive, he's long, kind of like Josh has mentioned with Murphy. He can play up and down the line of scrimmage. He has an NFL frame. And I think, and this is important, this is why I didn't really love Travon Walker, I think he's a great pass rusher right now. And I get it, and I heard it a million times. At Georgia, they asked their defensive linemen to do a bunch of different things. I thought they let Jalen Carter get up the field. A great run defender, too. So he's someone that feels like that elite prospect. When you're standing out as an underclassman and when like the whole defense gets drafted and you might be the best one, I think that's a good sign for the season that you're in store to have and where you'll ultimately land in the first round.
Yeah, and that's the case for both Will Anderson and Jalen Carter. And then on the opposite side of Will Anderson is Dallas Turner, number 15, who's not even draft eligible this year, and he could end up being a dude as well. He was a dude last year, but he could end up being a really the next great edge rusher to come out of the SEC when his number is called. Had someone a source reach out and saw the mock draft there and said that they didn't love Nolan Smith out of Georgia, and they weren't as a first rounder, and they didn't love Brandon Joseph, who's now at Notre Dame. Like, again, not as a first rounder. And they had someone at Notre Dame say that, look, we're glad to have him, but he's not going to come close to replacing Kyle Hamilton, which I think we could probably all agree on. But again, I'm glad Brandon Joseph came back to school and has that opportunity to prove himself. Is there anyone on that list that you saw and just sort of, Josh, made you think that, I don't know? Because I know last year I had Jalen Catalon going in the first round at one point, and I know you weren't super high on him. He went back to school. I think he got hurt, so he's back at Arkansas for another year.
Yeah, Catalon's kind of an undersized player. My biggest issue with him was that he had a lot of missed tackles. Easily one of the more dynamic defensive players. I mean, kind of like a Buda Baker in that regard. The one that kind of is a little bit higher for me than maybe what the consensus has been to this point is Jordan Addison.
Now
free agent wide receiver.
So good. So good.
You don't love him, is that what you're saying, or you do love him?
I don't. No, I don't.
Oh.
I mean, he's looked a little tentative across the middle. He's got some concentration drops, stuff like that.
That's the quarterback's fault.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Pittsburgh has led the nation in drops like 3 consecutive years. So that's
By the way,
I don't think that's Pickett's fault.
Let me ask you, Josh, as a Browns fan, are you happy with the Pickett pick? Does it concern you at all? Where are you at on that?
No, it doesn't concern me. He's a good football player, but when you're talking about having Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson and, Deshaun Watson in the AFC North, Pickett's going to have to do quite a bit to move the needle, even though I think he's walking into probably one of the better situations that he could have walked into because they do have some talent on that side of the ball. Obviously, I would like to see the offensive line be a little bit more improved, but he has some skill talent that he can distribute. Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. You know what? I wouldn't. But they've got the skill talent.
Let me ask this: percentage-wise, how much more concerned were you with Joe Burrow going to Cincinnati as opposed to Kenny Pickett?
I was pretty concerned, primarily because that one tugged at the heartstrings a little bit, because Joe Burrow grew up about a half an hour away from where I'm from, and it's just not an easy area to make it out of. So I was rooting for him every step of the way, and he had to go to a division rival, of course. But Joe Burrow, what he did in his final season with the Tigers was just incredible. I mean, what they were able to accomplish on the offensive side of the ball. So I had a feeling he was going to be a problem long term for Cleveland and most of the NFL.
Yeah.
As it turns out, that's been correct so far.
Yeah, I've talked myself into Kenny Pickett. At the time, I didn't love it at 20. I didn't hate it. I was like, lukewarm on it. But I think I've now decided to come from it from the perspective of there are only 15 first-round grades, as some teams purportedly had. Yeah, you got him in the second round, and that's where he should have gone. So whatever, we'll see what happens. But back to Jordan Addison and your Jordan Addison slander, which I can't believe you're putting that on the YouTubes.
Yeah, I mean, I've pretty much covered it to this point. Obviously, he's been very popular of late. With some NIL deals and some other institutions looking into his services. I'd just like to see him clean some stuff up. I mean, he's got good speed after the catch, that kind of stuff, but would like to see him clean up some other stuff. All
right, Traps, defend Jordan Addison. Defend his honor.
Okay, I thought he was sensational. I did see the drops on film, and he is smaller, so that could ultimately be something that causes him to fall a little. But it feels like, I mean, Jahan Dotson was what, 5'10", 176 or something, and he goes in the first round to the Commanders, like relatively high in the first round. Kind of feels like a better version of Jahan Dotson to me, that the route running ability is there, the speed down the football field. I think he's a little better after the catch than Jahan Dotson was. And I think if he lands, like there's some rumors that he was training with Bryce Young out in California, the Alabama quarterback. If he lands in that Alabama offense and has Bryce Young throwing him the football, I think he could be in for a monstrous season. And of course, we know now, not only is Alabama just a defensive factory, but now they're a first round wide receiver factory. So I think he could be kind of the next in line, especially if he lands at Alabama. And it feels like if you're Jordan Addison, you should go to a program, of course, that could win, but your quarterback should certainly be of the top priority in terms of where you're going to transfer.
Sweet mercy. That's disrespectful to Keaton Slovis. He can't find a landing spot or a wide receiver that wants to stay. All right, Traps, I don't know if Jordan Addison's your number one. If not, give me your number one in this draft class. If he is, give me your number two.
Are we talking receiver or just?
Yeah, receivers.
Let me pull this up very quickly. I thought Jackson Smith-Njigba from Ohio State, in watching every Ohio State game basically, because of Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave, obviously, that there were games where Smith-Njigba was the best receiver in that room and on the field in those games. So he's going to go into the summer as my number one receiver. A little bit bigger than Jordan Addison, but he's not, crazy big. I don't think he needs to be. I think he, from a standstill, his burst and acceleration and then clicking it into top gear, I think is as good as anyone in this draft class. And I really like Josh Downs at North Carolina. He kind of fell off a little bit down the stretch, if I remember correctly, watching Sam Howell. But another one, he's kind of a small separator. I think he's very good. Yards after the catch in the screen game, the quick, easy RPOs over the middle. He was someone that I thought felt like a first rounder in watching his film. So those two are near the top of my list. I have Jordan Addison up there as well. And one other name, bigger player, Quentin Johnston from TCU. He's kind of lanky and kind of is awkward when he's taking some hits at times, because there's just such a big target for corners and safeties to ultimately hit him. But I think at his size, with his speed, the big playability that he showed at TCU, Quentin Johnston is someone that kind of looks a little bit different than some of the other top receivers in this draft class.
All right, Josh, if Jordan Addison is undraftable in your mind, who do you like the best among the wide receivers?
Yeah, let's not go putting words in my mouth. There's no way that comes back to bite me.
I know. This won't show up on Twitter. Don't worry about it.
We've got to talk about Keishan Booty from LSU. I mean, he is
awesome name too.
Very physical player, kind of Jamar Chase-like. I haven't watched enough to know if he's Jamar Chase.
I think he wears number one as well, right?
Let's see. Did he
single digit for sure?
Yeah. So
go ahead. I'll look it up.
I don't know if he's got the same jump ball tendencies. I haven't watched enough yet, but a guy that can make plays after the catch. He's good in space. He's got that physicality, just the body structure that you see from Jamar Chase. I mean, you see the comparison. It's very easy. Great speed. I think he's only 19 years old, right now. So this is a very young player that plays much more physical and mature than what his age would indicate. Keishan Booty is one that I think needs to be heavily discussed.
One more name I forgot that I want to just throw in quick. Zay Flowers from Boston College. He was someone that I thought, like, even last year, I think even in my way too early top 100 or top 50, I had him relatively high up the board. And then he was good with their quarterback there at BC that's going to be on the draft radar as well.
Jerkovich.
Yeah, Jerkovich with a big arm. He's smaller. He's kind of feels like a slot-only wide receiver, but super explosive. The change of direction ability is good. The contact balance is there. It kind of feels like a Wendell Robinson who went in the second round of the Giants from Kentucky that Josh knows well. Zay Flowers is someone that's been on the draft radar for multiple seasons now that I think is in for a big 2022 and could go a little bit earlier than people think, especially looks like this super deep, once again, wide receiver class.
Yeah, I think these wide receivers are going to be deep for years to come, just because that's how these high school offenses are going, and obviously college is following suit. I'm looking through the list of names here that didn't make the first round. Chris Bell out of Minnesota is someone to keep an eye on. And then if we talk about tight ends, Michael Mayer is going to be the talk of tight ends this year, and deservedly
so. What about
so.
Eric Gilbert too from Georgia?
Eric Gilbert, he transferred. Where did he transfer from?
He went from LSU to Florida to
there
Georgia.
You go. Yeah.
Yep.
And Jahlil Billingsley left Alabama to go to Texas. If he can sort of stay focused and clean up the inconsistencies, I like him a lot in terms of the athleticism. And then Will Mallory was sort of on the draft radar last year at the U, and he came back. I'm not sure if he had injuries or not, but that quarterback situation was up and down there for a while. So he and Van Dyke will be someone to watch as well. Anything else you guys want to talk about with this 2023 mock draft? Traps, yours is coming out. Has yours come out, Josh?
No, I'm the Monday after.
Oh, okay. So you have time to continue grinding the tape.
It feels like it's going to be a good edge rusher class again. I mean, Josh already mentioned Murphy from Clemson. I think his teammate Trenton Simpson, who's an off-ball linebacker, but was like the number one off-ball linebacker recruit a couple of years ago. From the little film that I've watched of him of that Clemson defense, kind of has some Micah Parsons-esque ability that they used him as a blitzer and edge rusher a lot. He's long but very chiseled already early in his college career. Trenton Simpson is a name to keep an eye on. And two players, I'm going to butcher their names. I have the pronunciation right here. Zion Tupua Fatoui from Washington. He was on the radar 2022. But
I liked him last year.
Yeah, his film was like, holy crap. Like, he was speed to power conversion, pass rush moves, bend. And then Felix Anudike-Uzomah from Kansas State, another one, was one of the highest sack total guys in college football last season. Who knows how he'll ultimately play this year. And we've seen a lot of these guys that have high level productivity early and then can't match it later in their careers. And then Will Mcdonald from Iowa State, another one that's been on the draft radar because of his productivity early in his career as a freshman, a sophomore, and a junior. I just feel like it's going to be par for the course. Good quarterback class, good receiver class, and good edge rusher group, because those are the premier positions, not only in the NFL, but in the college football level too.
All right, we'll get out of here on this. Josh, give me one or two teams that are going to be in the quarterback market next draft based on your ability to see into the future.
Based on my ability to see into the future, I will say Seattle, certainly. Maybe Atlanta.
Wow.
Depending on how long they're, because if you're in a position to take one of these top quarterbacks, you're not going to pass on one just because you took Desmond Ridder in the third round. That's the only argument for that. Maybe Tennessee. I don't think they're going to be high enough to draft one, but that's a team. Philadelphia. We'll see what happens with Jalen Hurts this year. He's suddenly got everything that he needs to be successful. So if you don't walk away feeling good about him this year, maybe that's an option. And then I'll leave it at that, because there's a couple more, but I don't want to take any more from you guys.
Those are good ones. What do you got, Traps?
How about the Giants? I'm not thinking that Daniel Jones is going to have this breakout year.
They didn't pick up his fifth-year option.
They didn't pick up that option. I like what they did in the draft and then free agency, but I just feel like by year 2, Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll seeing this quarterback class are going to be like, we're going to pick our guy. And then what do you guys think? And maybe this is just to kind of make the Bills Mafia feel a little better. What do you guys think about the Dolphins? Like, are you guys envisioning a breakout season with Tyreek Hill for Tua? I'm kind of on the fence about it because what I've seen from Tua in his first 2 seasons, I would say, yeah, they're going to move on from him. But the situation is so much better going into the season than it's been in the past.
Yeah. He's gotten better each and every year, but not to the point where you're like, oh, that's why we took him the pick before Justin Herbert went to the Chargers.
Yeah,
in fact,
exactly.
I had Spencer Rattler going to the Dolphins at 27, which would be the ultimate slap in the face of Dolphins fans to go from Tua to Spencer Rattler. But I think the Dolphins is a fair one to ask about. The Giants is a fair one to ask about. What about the teams last year that drafted quarterbacks? Which one of those of that crew, 5 of them, is going to be like? What if Zach Wilson throws 4 touchdowns and 27 interceptions? Like, are we like we just talked about the Dolphins having everything around Tua? Like one of those guys, like Trey Lance. What if Trey Lance has similar numbers to the made up Zach Wilson's numbers? At what point are we like, okay, back to the drawing board?
Well, isn't there some speculation already that like the 49ers aren't happy with Trey Lance? I saw that like going around Twitter yesterday, and I was like, is that just a made up rumor? Or because if that's the case, I could see that ultimately, having to kind of redo the entire rebuilding process for the 49ers, moving on from Jimmy Garoppolo. But having traded up for Trey Lance, they don't really have a lot of ammunition to ultimately do that. So they're kind of almost stuck with Trey Lance. I could see the Jets being like, hey, Zach Wilson, like we've added Garrett Wilson, a lot of pieces on defense, so you're not going to be in as big of holes. If Zach Wilson doesn't take that pretty noticeable year 2 leap that we've seen from other quarterbacks who have gone on to become stars, I could see the Jets being in the market too.
Yeah, it's probably the Patriots. It's time to move on from Mac Jones.
Bailey Zappi time.
Nobody clipped that. That was a joke. I did not mean that.
Yeah, you meant it. AFC Championship game, Mac Jones versus Kenny Pickett. You heard it here first, so I look forward to that. All right, that's all we got. Josh Allen, get out of here with your popcorn arm. Clip that, Bills fans. In fact, James Cook I'm like filling into Brinson's shoes. James Cook isn't even as good a running back as Josh Allen. Take that, Bills fans. Oh, Lord. All right, that's it. That's all we got.
Did you see his Panthers rant?
I saw. Okay, I went to YouTube to see what you numbnuts are talking about, and I saw the headline, and I said, I'm not clicking that.
Did you see how many dislikes it got? The most in Pick 6 podcast history.
I thought you could no longer give dislikes on YouTube. Like he broke.
They found a way.
They broke the algorithm, and because Brinson's rant was so epic, it got the most ever.
Epic is one word for it. I'm sure it was asinine would be a better word for it. I mean, it's the Panthers. Oh, I bet he leaned. I don't know. Like he got in trouble with the Panthers because he kept calling like a dog dookie organization. So.
Well, he probably got another text from his source or whatever the case may be because he really laid into him hard for the Matt Corral pick.
Yeah, he's not one to back away from bad publicity. So with that in mind, Brinson will be back, assuming he doesn't get killed by a bear on his camping trip. He'll be back for the next podcast. All right, guys, peace out. We'll be back later, talk more draft later in the summer, I'm sure. Until then, thanks for joining us, everybody.